It's time for the Voice of Reason podcast. Here are your hosts, Sean Phillips, Andy Van Beber, and Travis Kirkendall.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're back. We're live. Here we are. And joining me tonight is Travis Kirkendall. Sean Phillips is out, but we're back. It's only been since February, but man, after the Super Bowl, Sean and we're like, man, I really don't like politics right now. And I was like, yeah, I really don't like politics either. Let's take a break. And then it turned into this, but hey, buddy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't even remember when the last time, what the last episode I was on with you guys. It's been that long.
Yeah.
But no, it's cool to get to come back for this. I mean, unfortunately, it's kind of not a fun topic, but an important one.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But
that's kind of why we all kind of started going. I mean, we continue to send articles and stuff to each other all the time. That never stopped. But I think, given the state of the world and what's going on, we were kind of like, hey, we should do an episode.
That was because when all this stuff started going down with Israel and Iran, I was like, boys, we need to do an episode. But life happens, and why don't you share? I mean, for those who don't know, the good news that you have about your new edition.
Yeah, we have baby number 2 on the way. Arthur will be born in potentially December 4th. But it's still far away to be determined. You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really excited for that, and yeah, it's a good time for us. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, do you? Was your son your first son? Was he earlier? Or was he on time? Or what was the?
He was like 2 or 3 days after.
Yeah.
The potential date.
Well, that's good. Well, that's and I'm in my update. I'm still old and fat, so that's always a good thing to know and everything. But no, so a lot has happened, obviously, between now and then, and we've got a lot to unpack in the next few episodes. However we do it, we're still mulling this over, but what we're going to focus on tonight is the mess that is in the Middle East. And so if you've been living in a cave or under a rock, or just you've been totally unplugged from the news, on, what was it? It was June the 4th. Was it June?
I believe it was
14th.
Was it last Friday when?
Yeah, last Friday. So Israel for the... I've got it. I wrote down my timeline. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and for the fourth time since 2012, Israel has claimed that Iran is on the precipice of developing a nuclear weapon. They've enriched enough uranium.
To add to that, I didn't see the videos specifically, but I've heard reference that Netanyahu has been saying this since even the early 2000s.
Yes, and it was, I watched. I caught it from watching what got me cued into that was I watched Jon Stewart's monologue on the Daily Show this week, and he played every clip before that Netanyahu has said this, and so with this latest, so now here we go. We're going to go in. We're going to launch these missiles on or we're going to launch an airstrike on Iran's nuclear enrichment or nuclear facilities. Let's just call it that. What they're claiming, Iran has claimed since the beginning, this is for civilian use. This is to generate power for everything from medicine to science to research to for power. This is what it's being used for, and it's not being used for developing weapons. Although, for the for what they've been doing, it's I don't know. I guess the first thing we need to ask ourselves before we really get deep into this: do we really believe that the Iranians are making weapons?
I guess we can start with so that intelligence report that came out with Tulsi Gabbard, I believe it just came out back, I believe it was March or like spring of this year, where they, I believe it was a hearing that she was on, where she had mentioned that their levels, I forget the metric that the metric they use to determine like uranium levels or whatever it is, but they were pretty high. It was like 60, whatever
Right.
that metric is.
Right.
I don't know if you can pull that up right now. I don't have my computer,
I may have wrote that down.
but their levels were at an all-time high,
Yeah.
like even higher than pre-Iran nuclear deal. But they had determined that the intelligence community believed that even though these levels were at that number, they didn't believe that Iran intended to make a nuclear weapon out of them. However, they did note that there was a stockpile of these uranium deposits, whatever you want to call it, that was being extracted, created, whatever. And to my knowledge, that analysis hasn't really changed. And I was just reading what I sent you today. There was another intelligence report saying that they only believe that there was going to be a push for a weapon if the United States
gets involved
directly,
Right.
it gets involved or directly attacks Iran. Which I think you can argue that with Israel doing direct strikes on nuclear sites, if they hadn't already started working towards a weapon when this, the Israel-Hamas conflict started,
yeah.
So they could very well be on their way. Go ahead.
It does say, so what it says is Iran's nuclear energy program involves uranium enrichment with levels reaching 60% at some facilities, which is significantly higher than what is needed for civilian power generation, but
Yes.
below weapons grade enrichment, which is 90%.
Right.
So, but the catch is they're not allowing for any external inspections, and that raises the red flag for Israel and everybody else. And so they're
sure, but didn't that started though? Because Trump pulled out of the Iranian deal. What year was that? 2016. When he first got 2015.
Mm-hmm.
He pulled out of the deal, but then they had stopped doing I believe, didn't they stop once? What had happened? I can't remember that article. Was it when we struck? When their general or whoever it was killed?
Yes. Yep.
That
was so. Let me just so I can actually say I used my notes here. Let's just. I'm going to build a timeline for everybody real quick, just to show how this all occurred. Okay, so let's go pre-Ayatollah. Well, Ayatollah is like saying supreme leader or whatever of Iran. So
correct.
The current Ayatollah is a gentleman by the name of Ayatollah Ali, I believe is his name. And so pre Ayatollah Islamic State, 1957 was the birthing stage of Iran's nuclear program. U.S. and Iran sign a nuclear co-op program called U.S. Atoms for Peace. Okay. 1963, Iran signs the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was put out there by Kennedy. That was part of his birthing process. 1967, U.S. starts to supply Iran with 5 kilograms of enriched uranium and 112 grams of plutonium. Fast forward to 1970. Iran by the early 1970s, Iran has 20 nuclear power stations built across Iran. Iran has 20 nuclear power stations built across Iran. Then you hit 1979. Okay, so 1979 is the beginning of the Islamic Revolution. And through a lot of the research that I've been doing, a lot of a lot of political commentators, you know, God rest his soul, are still slamming Jimmy Carter for this. You know, 45 years later, they're still slamming Carter for this and saying, man, Carter should have taken, you know, because we had a great Iran, and I saw, not to get too sidetracked, but I saw a video pre Islamic Revolution days, and I mean, Iran was like the you know, like the French Riviera of the Middle East. It was a vacation spot. It was very Western friendly. It was, you know, they were one of the.
So was Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yes.
Prior to
prior to
I think prior to the Russian war.
Yes. So 1979. You also have to remember 1979 was when the Soviet Union went to war with Afghanistan. Okay. So all that kind of falls into line together there. So then 1982, the Iranians build their own nuclear reactor with their own uranium, and they find out that they are actually uranium rich in Iran. Okay, and they build their first uranium reactor in Isfahan. 1985. This was a critical one. Iran, Syria, and Libya have a conference, and they discuss to develop nuclear weapons to counter the Israeli threat. Okay. 1990. This was also another one that I never, and people aren't. Iran makes a deal with still the Soviet Union to rebuild the Bushehr power plant. Fast forward to August 2002, they opened the two new plants in which you're hearing a lot about this plant in Natanz, I think is how it's pronounced, in Iraq, Arak. In 2003, now this is another one that kicked me in the butt. I couldn't believe this. Iran makes an offer to, at the time, President George Bush, in light of everything that was going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, that they would not make any weapons of mass destruction, and they would help take joint actions against terrorists and try to normalize relations. And at the time, Dick Cheney was the head of the Vice President. Dick Cheney was the one who was kind of in charge of managing this deal with Iran, and he basically scoffed at it because he didn't want to be aligned with a radical Islamic State. Okay, so there was an opportunity there. August 2005, the Ayatollah issues a decree forbidding the production of stockpiling of weapons of mass destruction. December 2007, the British intelligence reports that Iran is trying to weaponize, but at that time, the CIA said, no, they're not. Okay, 2012. Netanyahu, Netanyahu says that Iran is producing weapons. 2018, Netanyahu says Iran is producing weapons. May of 2000, I stand corrected. I was wrong. It wasn't 2015. It was 2018. May of 2018, Trump pulls out of the Paris Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and Iran, if the United States is pulling out, we're not going to, really worry about it. So, and with
that, when we pulled out a deal, we also put sanctions back on their economy as well.
And the Iranian economy, if you look at what I had that somewhere else. I know the average Iranian makes, I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like the equivalent of $5,000 a year. So I mean, these people are not rolling in it. I mean, even though it is a religious state, it's not. It's got its own little quirks where you've got that small group that is ruling, and that's why Netanyahu on it was Tuesday made an appeal directly to the Iranian people and said, hey, this is your time. We know that you're oppressed, and we know that you're being held down. It's your time to rise up. But I don't know what are your do you
basically calling for a regime change, which isn't the first time they've been pushing for that.
Right. And to me, this whole thing there's a lot of dangerous implications that are going into this. Number one, we don't know. The United States left hand is not communicating with its right hand, because at the time when those first strikes happened, our Secretary of State comes out and he said, Marco Rubio comes out and he says, we are not connected with this strike.
Israel operated on their own completely. Yep. That was the first thing they had said.
But then you get, then Trump does what Trump does best. He goes to social media and he, Israel or Iran needs to do all these unconditional surrender, kind of an or else statement, which he is so notorious for making. And Iran needs to pull out,
everyone needs to evacuate Tehran and meet. That was wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
So
to see that.
And so what we have at our disposal, and this is the one thing. So what they're using right now, Israel is using right now are these they're called GBU bunker busters. Okay. And these are 4,000-pound bombs. They are laser-guided weapons that can penetrate 20 feet of concrete or 100 feet of rock and dirt. Okay, so the next step. And this is what is being what's stored at Whiteman Air Force Base. For those of you in Missouri, those are our audience that's familiar. Whiteman Air Force Base in Knob Noster, Missouri. This is where the stealth bombers are headquartered at. Okay, this is the base that also has what's called the MOP bunker buster, which is the massive ordnance penetrator, and this can penetrate reinforced concrete and steel. Okay, and these now have been these guys are on active standby, and that was made public. I think that was on Wednesday. So, and then, of course, on June 16th, USS Nimitz left the South China Sea heading west, okay? And Trump has basically said, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And like you said, Travis, everyone should...
That's been the narrative push now, is like, they can't have a nuke. They can't have a nuke.
And so and I did these, I'm sure the numbers have went up, but as of Wednesday night, there were so far 220 Iranians have been killed, 1,200 have been injured, 24 Israelis have been killed, and like I said, Trump has teased at airstrikes. He demands an unconditional surrender, and he met with his national security advisors on Tuesday, and he's like, well, maybe we will, and maybe we won't, and so he's making just really dangerous statements. And I don't know, what is your take on this, Travis? What do you feel is gonna? I mean, what do you see coming down the pike next?
I mean, to add what you were saying at the end there. So what I was reading is he has already approved of a military plan of action, and he has publicly stated that he's going to decide within 2 weeks, or he's given the Iranians 2 weeks before he makes his decision. Which publicly saying and giving a timeline like that is pretty classic Trump negotiating tactics.
Well, strong. Yeah.
I'm skeptical because, I mean, if you look at the beginning of this attack, when the attack first happened, we were planning a meeting with Iran.
Yes.
Sunday.
Yes.
And from what I was listening to on this conflict, I mean, if they weren't really going to expect an attack until at least after meeting with the United States. So this attack completely caught them off guard. They thought they were at least good until they had that meeting. And I almost wonder if we used that as a tactic against them so that Israel had that element of surprise, because it's pretty obvious now, because like it started out where Rubio went on to say, the U.S. had nothing to do with this attack. The Israelis operated completely on their own. That changed to, well, Trump knew about the attack and then he gave them the blessing, to we have military there and we are assisting them. and we are also defending Israel, which they are assisting in the defensive efforts with like the missiles and that's I mean Ted Cruz even said that on the Tucker podcast, which I'm sure we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah,
But
that was fun.
It's interesting. I really don't know where they go from here. I mean, Iran's made it pretty clear that they're not even going to begin negotiating until Israel stops firing missiles, and that doesn't seem like that's going to stop anytime soon. I'm kind of skeptical on, I guess it comes down to like, do we really believe they have a nuclear weapon or not? All the intelligence reports that have come out have said that they don't have one. They've indicated that if they were to pursue one based off the levels they have, they could potentially have a weapon within weeks to months.
They said 2 weeks, because if they're producing weapons grade uranium, I forgot what word but they said they could put a weapon together in 2 weeks.
And they compared the weapon they'd be able to build to like what the Hiroshima bomb was.
Yes, it's not like a doomsday, but it would do damage.
No, but Tel Aviv wouldn't exist anymore.
Right,
let's put it that
right.
way. So it's a problem. I can understand. Unfortunately, because of foreign policy mistakes, in my opinion, we've put Iran in a corner now where. It's on one hand for us, like I can, if Iran has nuclear capabilities, and I didn't even consider this until I was talking with a friend of mine who's in the service, and he kind of explained this to me, and I was like, that's a good point. I can kind of see why maybe the U.S. is all of a sudden might get engaged in this. Iran is the 5th largest oil exporter in the world currently.
Yes.
Oil is traded and sold in dollars because we have the world reserve currency. If Iran has the nuclear backing, has a nuclear weapon in their back pocket and can maybe make a stand against the U.S. and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to buy or we're not going to use U.S. dollars to sell oil anymore. We're actually going to go to the yuan or we're going to sell it in the Russian ruble. That's a big problem for the U.S. And that has a trickle-down effect. If other countries can see that, maybe they follow suit. It's unfortunately these wars in the Middle East come down to oil a lot of the time, and I really do think that does play a huge factor here.
I don't know what so ever since, and I trace a lot of this back to the oil crisis of the 1970s, back to my childhood, and to me that seemed after that. Because that was kind of triggered by the 6 Day War that Egypt and Lebanon took on Israel and then basically those Middle East OPEC nations basically, if we didn't stop helping Israel, that they would cut off oil supply, and they did, and we had the oil shortage and the oil crisis here in America. And I think ever since that time we have tried our darndest to really stick our foot in the door in the Middle East to try to, like you said, to have more influence over who trades what, who gets to control, who gets to buy this oil and at what price, and it's really gotten us involved in more things than we need to be, because if you buy into that line. If you buy into that line that says, well, this needs to be a democratic, free people in the Middle East, and they need to be out from underneath these theocracies, and I've got property that I'll sell you really cheap. That to me is a line of crap. And underneath all of this, like you said, oil is definitely at the base of all of this. But now, the fact that we are pushing this to the edge, right to the precipice of full-out possibility of nuclear war, You know, if we drop this mop bomb, if we start flying, you know, stealth bombers into Iranian airspace, if we end up parking the Nimitz in the Persian Gulf, I mean, that opens up to me a diplomatic crisis that it's going to be harder and harder to back out of. And like you said, we're backing Iran into a corner. And sooner or later, they're going to reach out to somebody who, what's the old saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay.
Well, you've already had China and Russia publicly stated, like, hey, you know, we can work a deal out here.
Right.
We can come in. And I also read there was an article talking about like these random cargo planes from China have been like flying into Iran, which no one really knows what's in them.
What's in them?
Hopefully, U.S. intelligence knows by now. But
well, we'll never.
I'm personally like, if we're going to talk about other countries intervening, I don't think Russia is capable currently.
No, they've got
simply because they're so tied up with Ukraine and they've been so depleted by that war.
Mm-hmm.
China,
they've got money to burn.
They got money to burn, but I mean, Xi Jinping has been pretty quiet.
Unusually quiet.
Yeah, and you haven't really seen any like big moves or big actions taken by the Chinese with this. I think they're really kind of waiting and seeing, okay, what the hell is the U.S. going to do? I don't think they really want to, I'll be honest, I don't think they want to get involved. I think that's why they're maybe pushing for a diplomatic solution, which, you know, I think there should be a diplomatic solution here, of course, but I think the U.S. is kind of really feeling out and seeing like, is anyone going to step in here? And I don't think they are.
And something I've noticed too, I don't know if you caught this. I found a graphic. I'm trying to find it. I saved it on my desktop somewhere. I can't find it. But the number of weapons that Iran has been using, the number of missiles that they've launched, and then in the 4 or 5 different launches they've done this week, have steadily decreased in the amount that they're launching.
Yes.
And I mean, you can read into that whatever you want. Does Iran have a depleted supply? Are they?
I've read reports that Israel and the U.S.'s supply is getting depleted too from their defense systems.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's
that Iron Dome.
It's a lot of money.
Well, see,
a lot of money, a lot of resources
that
go into that.
And the Israel. I'll say this: if there's somebody that I wouldn't want to piss off, it is Israel, because they've been in the frying pan since 1948. The moment that Israel declared themselves a state, and Truman gave them diplomatic recognition in 30 minutes after the declaration of that state. And so we've been in the frying pan there with them since 1948. And Israel has made its defense their number one priority. Example. Yes. They have, so I mentioned the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is their missile defense system, and like you said, Travis, it's state of the art. But I mean, they basically launched these counter, you're military guy, but to intercept.
It's like an interception system, basically.
And it's multi-billion-dollar system, and every time that you want to, if you've ever watched Top Gun or anything like that, or any of these fighter plane movies where they launch flares, these countermeasures. That's what I was thinking of, countermeasures, and they launch these. You're not just okay, we're going to try to aim our missile at that missile. You're throwing a barrage of missiles up there, or countermeasures to make sure that strike doesn't get through. And that's why you're seeing more deaths in Iran than you are in Israel. Israel, to say that they're still below 100, that's 100 too many, but that's because of that. Second thing, Israeli military is mandatory. That's a lot, and of course, a lot of European nations do this too. That kids, after they graduate from high school, they either have to serve in the military or they have to work for the government for 3 years before they can go on to anything else. Okay. The Israeli Air Force, and I found this, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but I found this week. They start training their pilots at age 14. They're not putting them in the cockpit at 14, but they're teaching them the basics of how to. And so by the time they get into a plane when they're 18 or 19, these guys know everything about these planes that they need to know about them. And so they've got one of the best air forces in the world. And so and you look at that was another thing that I picked
real
up.
Quick to add to Israel's capabilities.
Go ahead.
There's two big ones. I mean, number one, they have a very good special operations group, like very well trained, very good in urban warfare. But also too, Mossad, their intelligence network is one of the most broad, and I mean, they're one of the best in the world.
I didn't even think I forgot about.
I mean, Mossad was they're the ones that did the. I believe didn't they set up when they did that initial attack? They had went into Iran and set up like a mini airfield for drones when they initiated that attack. And they gathered all the intelligence on all the sites and Mossad. I mean, there's a lot of history with Mossad in general, but I mean, for just this conflict alone, I mean, they're you can't understate their capabilities.
You know, Mossad is argued that they, like you said, they have deep regional expertise and focus. They can put people in places, the fact you have an air base inside your own country, it's like, okay, who left the gate open? Who's not? But
random, but good movie on what was it called? Munich.
Yes, the one about the Olympics. Yes.
Yeah, great movie if you want to. It's older, being back in whatever year that was, but a little insight into Israeli Secret Service and that kind of thing. But pretty cool. Good movie.
Mossad is the one who has done the assessment. I just confirmed it because I want to make sure before I said it. Mossad was the one who made the assessment that they could assemble a nuclear weapon within 15 days. Of course, the U.S. is like, no, they can't do that. So, why are you got to
consider there's potentially some bias in that intelligence assessment too.
Yeah. But, the other thing that I think you really have to consider, and we had mentioned this earlier on, regime change. Okay. So this, and again, I'm not going to put this past Mossad to try to get somebody in there to assassinate Ayatollah Ali. I mean, I'm not going to put that past them.
I mean, they've already stated that they can do it, and
I think easily. I think they could easily do it, and
even Trump said he's an easy target.
Because I was you and I think it was you and I, or maybe me. It was so last night, and my algorithm on TikTok is about as broad as it is wide because I don't watch all the goofy TikTok dance crap that my kids do. I subscribe to everything from people who restore cars to geopolitical stuff. And so this last night popped up as I was scrolling through. It was a previous live feed from wherever the Ayatollah does his speeches from. It looks like it's a giant convention center, and you've got all these just, looks like common folks in there. And they were saying in unison, like he would say a paragraph. He would say, that, I'm not even going to make any comments about the U.S. leader and the stupid statements that he's making. And then they'll say, death to Israel, death to Britain, death to America. Anyone who defies the ultimate adjudicator is an enemy of Allah and all this other stuff. And I mean, it's like it's on cue, and it's just, I thought Americans were the only ones brainwashed by politicians, but it seems to be that in Iran it happens that way too. So there were protests on the streets, and I saw news this morning, Tehran, I mean, there were protests in the streets in Tehran this morning. So, I mean, it rallies a sense of nationalism within these Iranians, because it's just been something that they've been raised on, to hate Israel so much. You know, that's ingrained into their DNA, to hate Israel. And I still remember when Ahmad Ahmadinejad, and why I remembered that name, I can't forget. But Ahmad Ahmadinejad, when he was president, and this was back in 2012 when he was president of Iran. Even though the Ayatollah is the supreme leader, they have a democratically elected, heavy air quotes, democratically elected president. Ahmad Ahmadinejad, he did an interview on 60 Minutes back in 2012. Go look this up on YouTube. And in this interview, he said two alarming things. Number one, he said the Holocaust was a hoax. He said it was an attempt by the Zionist state of Israel to garner sympathy, or not the Zionist state, but the Zionist Jews trying to garner sympathy, and that it really didn't happen. The second thing, you know, when they pressed him in 2012, are you developing nuclear weapons? And he categorically denied, no, we're not developing nuclear weapons. And if we did, we would make Israel a sandbox. Not word for word, but, you know, that whole it should be enough to concern people. But I go back to my original question: Does Iran, do they possess? Do they? I mean, I honestly, and I don't think they have. What do you think they actually are possessing a weapon right now?
Currently, no. I truly believe if they had one, they would have already been. It would either already have been used, or this would have been like publicly threatened. Like they would have been like open about it, and I think U.S. intelligence would have like picked up on that already.
Yeah, I really, I still think, and I started saying this to you before off the air, but I'm gonna say it publicly. I honestly do think that this is a distraction from something else. I don't know if it's a power grab for Israel, or if, like you said earlier, it's a push for a regime change. But to me,
I mean, the regime change thing. Let's go into that, because let's go back to, remember when Trump was saying with the Gaza situation that we are going to own Gaza,
and
we're going to make something of it. We're going to basically,
like a
for lack of
tourist,
better terms, it was going to make it a touristic giant Mar-a-Lago Trump,
and they were going to relocate those people to Lebanon.
Yeah, and that kind of died out, whatever. But now you're in a situation where there's a big push for a regime change in Iran now, which I don't think people realize what we're getting into if that's what we're going for. Look what happened. I mean,
what's their track record?
The U.S. has such a great track record when it comes to regime changes. Just look at Libya. What's this stop? Just stop there. Just stop there. That's enough. Just look at Libya, right? Syria, which they have their new president now, but it's still a mess of a country.
Oh my gosh. Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan, that turned out great for us. Iraq's still a question mark. I mean, and that's just Middle East, right? We have a terrible track record with this, and like the money that would be involved in that, the resources, the lives that would be lost.
Boots on the ground. Yeah, but how many?
Yeah, you're gonna have
boots on the ground.
Iran's a big country. It's a giant country. It's a large population. This isn't an easy just, you kill the leader and someone else gets elected. Like it doesn't work like that.
No. You're gonna take out their president. When you say regime change, top down,
it would destabilize
Middle East
more than just Iran. All Middle East would be destabilized. It's a big blow. It's not as simple as this. You kill the leader and it's over. And
how that would spill over to the rest of that part of the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
for one, if you thought your gas prices were high now,
well,
they kill the leader of that country, your gas prices are going up
well,
even
and that's
higher.
the other thing. What is the let me see here. The current price of crude oil right now. Let me see. I heard this.
Not that that's the most
No, but
important thing here, but
I'm just saying that what the
it'll
effects
relate
that
to some
it's
people here.
right now. So it's today it's up to $74 a barrel. So that's not. I mean, we saw back in, well, heck, when you were in high school and we were paying close to $4 a gallon for gas, and that was when it was way over $100 a barrel. So I mean, we're not totally, but man, we keep on banging this war drum long enough. It's going to, like you said, it's going to destabilize the situation. So I guess the way we can end out with this tonight is, I mean, so what's our next move? I mean, what do you? I'll say what I think, and then I want to hear what you have to say. Our next move, and currently this afternoon, when I last checked, this afternoon, Iran's, it was either the defense minister or one of their foreign ambassadors met with French, British, and other European leaders to try to bring people to the table. But to me, there's not going to be a deal until you get Netanyahu to stop being so trigger happy. So if the United States is going to do something, number one, they have got Trump. If he's going to do something big, he or Marco Rubio need to step up to the plate and say, look, there's nothing constructive that's going to happen from this. Keep on launching these, if you're going to launch, and if they don't launch this big bomb, if we move forward and say, okay, we're going to send our stealth, because our stealth bombers are the only planes this isn't something that you just put on a Israeli jet, and this is going to be carried over by one of our stealth bombers, and we carry that over, we're escalating it into war. Instead, we need to, the wise person in my mind is, if you tell the Iranians, hey, we're going to pull back some of these sanctions that we have on you, if you allow inspections, and if you start downgrading, you don't need to be enriching.
So basically, when you go back to the Iranian deal that we signed before,
yes,
with President Obama,
yes,
but
yes,
I don't think Trump would do it.
No. What's your?
I think the main reason. Well, what do I think? I mean, Trump said he's working at something out that's bigger. How did he word it? He made a public statement saying, like, I'm working on something that's even bigger than a ceasefire deal. Or can you look up his exact wording there?
Yeah, I will. Go ahead.
I look at that and I'm like, well, what could be bigger than that? What could be bigger than a deal being made here, other than I don't see a deal being made where Iran just drops all their nuclear capabilities for the exchange of sanctions. Maybe if they're just that desperate to keep power, and because the alternative is the leadership's just going to get killed. I would like to think they at least know that.
So in his statement today, Trump warns Iran to agree to a deal before there is nothing left. And that was 3:20 this afternoon.
I feel like we have pushed it too far to where a diplomatic solution is going to be possible. Unfortunately, my gut feeling tells me that we are going to attack these nuclear sites, and the U.S. will get involved directly.
When he was questioned about a potential strike on Thursday, Trump said it could very well happen. I don't want to say imminent, but it's something that could very well happen.
I don't know. His negotiating, I didn't get much confidence out of his art of the deal negotiating with these tariff deals and trade deals, so I don't see this playing out very well. Just and just considering the language that's being used, seeing the escalation that's happened, I unfortunately see us getting involved directly. and no, where that goes, I have no idea. I think it's funny that if you remember the debate with him and Kamala, where he was saying like, if they get elected, it's gonna be World War III. He was like yelling at the camera, and like here we are now, potentially about to get in a war
World
with
War III. Yeah.
potentially yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Right.
But no, I really don't. Unless Trump can really pull a rabbit out of his ass and give us something we weren't expecting, based on his negotiating track record, I just don't see it, and just how I've seen this escalate.
Well, yeah,
I don't see it.
And we're going to save this for a later show, but I mean, right now this is not the Trump 2.0 that everybody was expecting.
No.
This is not,
absolutely not.
because I'm on the campaign trail. I'm going to end the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, the first 24 hours. I'm going to lower gas prices. I'm going to lower grocery prices. I'm going to get peace in the Middle East. You're not seeing any of that happen, and
then a big beautiful bill that actually increases spending.
Right, and the big beautiful, and then the whole thing about, and then getting Elon in there, and then that whole breakup situation, and which don't even get me started on the fact that this is my other ulterior. You want to hear my crazy weird? Here's my crazy weird conspiracy theory.
I already know where you're going, and it is interesting that no one's talking about it anymore.
But the fact that Elon comes out and says Trump is on the Epstein list, and then all this crap blows up in the Middle East. I mean, this reminds me so much of the Lewinsky and Clinton thing back in the 90s, and we start bombing the crap out of Iraq and all this stuff to deflect from Trump's inappropriate. I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this movie before. Wait a minute, where have I seen this movie before? And that's my crazy conspiracy theory right there.
I do want to add one more thing before we end this. We referenced it quickly, but I encourage everyone. I'm not a big Tucker Carlson fan at all.
Oh, no, I'm not
But
either.
his interview / debate with Ted Cruz, I think everyone needs to see
that was
eye-opening. It opens. You see the rhetoric of what the Republican base.
Ted Cruz is not thinking on his own. Ted Cruz is not thinking on his own in this.
His answers were just
talking points.
Insane. His rhetoric was insane. His ideology.
It was Republican talking. Everything's like, okay, I've heard that before. Yep, I've heard that. Yep, I've heard that. Yep, and then he's like. And Ted Cruz,
how defensive he got, and like he was literally putting words in Tucker Carlson's mouth, like
making him sound anti-Semitic and everything. Yeah,
and he was literally like, Tucker would say something, and Ted would add like 3 other things to what Tucker said. Like, whoa, like that's not what I'm saying. And I don't know. I think everyone needs to see that. It was just ridiculous.
It surprised me.
I applaud Tucker for calling him out
for a guy who used to be so far up Trump's butt in the first Tucker Carlson, and now he's openly, and Tucker Carlson has gone on the record, and I'm not a fan. I think the guy's a douche, but he's went on record and he's criticized Trump, and he's criticized this whole thing, and the Ted Cruz thing, like you said, how many people? This is, and Ted Cruz sits on the Foreign Relations Committee.
Crazy.
He sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he has no clue about Middle East history. I mean, some of the stuff that Tucker was bringing up was, if you're on the foreign, what's the one of the things, what's the population of Iran? What's the
demographic? Like, if you're going to call for a regime change, but you don't even know the population or the demographic of that country, like we already lost.
Yeah. Are these, are these Sunnis? Are these Shiites? What are these guys? I'm like,
he's referencing, and then he got him referencing the Bible, and he doesn't even know where it's from in the Bible, and then saying the statement alone, like it started out with the statement of, I got my goal, or I wanted to get into Congress, so my primary goal being the defense of a foreign country, being that Israel. Insane. It should be first and foremost to serve the American people.
Yeah. All this.
And he literally said, my primary goal for getting into public office was to be a defender of Israel. What? Also, same guy that was caught trying to leave when his state was having
COVID shutdown.
blackouts. Yeah, don't forget about that. That guy's a cuck.
Where are you going, Ted? No, I'm just hanging out here at the airport. Oh, last call to Aruba.
I never liked that guy.
No,
after that interview,
that guy's a weasel.
How the hell did people vote for him?
He's a weasel.
Insane.
Anyway.
But yeah, people should watch that.
Yeah. Man, great conversation tonight. Thank you guys. I've been watching. Yes, I have seen you on the. Thank you, Zane, for listening. I saw your comment there. Alex, El Presidente, the counselor, our faithful listener. I know Jonathan Guthrie's out there listening. Guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll try not to be as far in between these next couple of episodes, but thanks for joining us tonight. For Travis and for Sean, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. Check out our previous shows and clips on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.